Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to see all of you here on such a beautiful Saturday morning. We appreciate it very much that you have taken the time to come and join us. I'd also like to welcome we've got Facebook Live feed running, we've got a YouTube feed running, so I would like to welcome also all of you who are looking at either of those feeds. We're delighted to have all of you with us this morning. My name is Christine Souders. I am the Associate Dean for Admission and Financial Aid here at the Journalism School. I'm going to tell you just a couple of brief things about the school, and then I'm going to go right into our faculty presentations so that you'll be able to hear a little bit about the 4 major programs that we offer here, which include the Master of Science, which has both full and part-time options, the Master of Arts program, which is designed for experienced professional journalists, so people who are already advanced in their careers. We also have a dual degree MS and computer science program. And we offer a PhD in communications. So I know that some of you are here with interests in a number of areas, and some perhaps in both a master's program or in a doctoral program. So what I'd like to do is invite the faculty to speak about each program, and then Professor Andy Tucker will take those of you who are interested in the doctoral program to another room, because that program functions very differently from the master's programs. Those of you who are on the Facebook or the YouTube feeds, we will also be running a Facebook feed from the conference room where Professor Tucker will be talking about the PhD program, so you won't miss out on that. What I would like to do is introduce our faculty members. We have Professor Ann Cooper at the far end of the table. She'll be speaking about our Master of Science programs. And I'm going to ask each faculty member as we come to you to introduce yourselves and a little bit about what you have done professionally so that people can get an idea about that. Next to Professor Cooper is Professor Elena Cabral, who is the director of the part-time Master of Science program. She also wears several hats, one of them being in the Career Services Office. She also does a lot of admissions work for us, and she, of course, teaches in the program. I should also have mentioned that Professor Cooper is the director of international programs, for those of you who might have interest in international programming that we have here. Professor Tucker, who is seated just to the left of Professor Cabral, is the director of the PhD program. She is an historian by training, and she'll be talking with all of you about the PhD in communications. And I make that specific, that emphasis. The master's programs are in journalism. The PhD program is an interdisciplinary communications program. And then next to Professor Tucker is Professor Jonathan Weiner. He is a professor in the Master of Arts program. So our program that's designed for journalists who are already trained, already experienced journalists, and who are thinking about specializing in a subject area concentration. They're interested in getting greater knowledge about a particular subject area, really going in depth in that area, and combining that in-depth knowledge with additional specialized journalism training to further the type of journalism work that they're able to do. And so with that, I'm going to ask, first of all, I'm going to ask Professor Cooper to start.
Thanks a lot, Christine, and welcome to all of you. It's really great to see so many people here interested in journalism. So my own background, like all the faculty here, I came to Columbia Journalism School after a long career as a working journalist. I've worked for newspapers, magazines, for National Public Radio. I was a foreign correspondent. I was NPR's Moscow correspondent, and then was based in Johannesburg for NPR, covered the UN. After that, I was the executive director of the Committee to Protect Journalists, so I've also been a press freedom advocate, which helps explain my interest and sort of path to becoming the international director here. One reason we have an international director is that 40% of our student body now comes from outside the U.S., and among those who, are from the U.S. are many who are interested in reporting abroad. What I say to all of our students is you're entering a very global profession today. So no matter what you're doing, even if you're working, for local TV or, a wire service in California or something like that, it's really important for you to know what's going on all over the world. You never know when you're going to be called on for that. So that's me. I teach in the MS program, which is our largest enrollment. It's a one-year program. We have 3 specializations now. One is data journalism. Anybody here interested in data journalism? Okay, you might after you get here, and even if you don't apply as a data, to be in the data journalism concentration, there are definitely data courses that you can take. The Brown Center here, Mark Hansen is the director, and he runs, breakfasts and evening events and all kinds of things to get you acquainted with data and data journalism, which is really a big and growing field, and our grads are much in demand because newsrooms haven't really had data journalists, and they come here, get the training, and can go off and work. Actually, one of our top students last year is at NPR right now, and working with other people, sort of strengthening and expanding their skills. Yes. What is data journalism? Okay. So I guess you all know that there's increasing amounts, like a tidal wave of public data that's available on the internet. And there are so many stories within that data, but how do you find them? It isn't just like looking at data and saying, oh, there's a story there. There's a lot you need to learn about studying data. I actually taught our data students this year in reporting, and we talked about interviewing the data. These are like numbers on your computer screen, and yet, you need to interview that data just as you would, a person, a source for your story. What's the data telling you? What's it not telling you? What are the inconsistencies here? How reliable is it? What do you not understand? How do you find the person who can help you understand it and who may have more information and more data to give you? What we say is, the data itself, you may find, some story in the numbers, like some trend that's revealed by census data, some change in demographics or change in behavior within a demographic. It's not enough to just find that. Then you've got to find people who represent that, or people who are affected by this change that's reflected in the data. All of our storytelling is based on human beings. Anyway, so data is a pretty new field. A few years ago, we called it computer-assisted reporting. I don't really hear that term anymore. If you work a lot with Mark Hansen, he will have you coding and doing a lot of sophisticated things so that you are, looking at the data, but, working with it yourself, able to adjust, to interview it, to test it out, and all of that. So it's really exciting. It's new, and it's definitely an area that has job opportunities afterwards. Our other specializations are investigative reporting. We've had that for 10 or 12 years, I guess, and what many news organizations are finding in this era when, advertising is down, there are layoffs, it seems like there's a lot of bad news about the industry. News organizations are having to kind of rethink and relook at what is it that we give to our readers, our viewers, our listeners. What's the value in what we do in this era when people refer to a lot of news as a commodity, like everybody has access to the same story when it's breaking news. And investigative journalism and data journalism are two of the areas where a news organization can give true value with the reporting that they do to their audience. Local TV is one area where I've seen, investigative journalism has become a thing, a unit within the TV channel and does really great stuff on a local level. Our other concentration is video documentary, and if you apply for that and are accepted, you will do one more semester, and that's when you actually do your video doc, usually done in the summer after the regular year. Some students choose to do it in the fall semester. So those are the three specializations. Most people are not in data, investigative, or video documentary. So what do they do? Well, everybody does a basic reporting class in the fall where most of the students are mixed up together. You may have, somebody from the investigative program or video doc, in your reporting class. You will also take in the fall a writing class and something from a selection of classes that we call sound and image. And that's where you can do a video course. Video 1 if you've had no video before. Video 2 if you do have some video. And if you're interested in broadcast and video, you can go on in the spring, and there are a number of choices for you to continue working in that area. If you're interested in audio, great choices. We have, I have to put in a little plug for NPR because I love NPR and I work there, but we literally have grads working all over the country in public radio. We have, there's nobody, if you're interested in public radio, you don't want to go anywhere else. This is the place to go. That's what our training is really focused on. But, newspaper work, magazines, it really doesn't matter what you're interested in. While the fall is, kind of you're building a lot of basic skills. In the spring, you've got many directions to go, and you can look at the curriculum listings. But, if you're particularly interested in business, there's, business reporting courses, science reporting, arts and culture, politics. As I said, a number of video classes, audio classes, data visualization. You can take an investigative course even if you're not in that investigative track. So really, all these opportunities are laid out in front of you. It's almost too many choices, but what we usually find is that when many students will start in the fall and they're not really certain which direction they want to go. After a while, it becomes clearer, something really grabs their interest. For example, in August, everybody does what we call boot camp, where everybody has several days learning audio skills, several days learning photo skills, social media skills, how to report using social media, and also using social media, to get your story out and attract an audience. Some people just fall in love with photography or with audio and then kind of go off on that track and choose their courses accordingly. So anyway, it's a pretty big smorgasbord in terms of curriculum, and I think I'll leave it at that, and happy to take your questions about any of those later on.
Hello, I'm Elena Cabral, and I am the director of the part-time program. How many of you are interested in the part-time program? Yay, that's great. I have to warn you, I have a cold, and So I'm trying to kind of keep the direction of my speech this way away from my colleagues, and I'm going to steal all the peppermint tea before I leave. But I am available to talk, and you can reach me at ecabral@columbia.edu. And I'm always here, even after hours, if you need to just have a chat about this program, because it is a fantastic program, and really, only like serious pneumonia would keep me away from talking about how much I love the part-time program as a graduate myself. I graduated in 1999. I went on to work at the Miami, first at Newsday for a quick internship just to sort of get me into a newsroom. And then the Miami Herald, both of which I got through the job fair. Our Career Expo, as we call it, is the best journalism job fair anywhere. And I have a role in it as a member of the career services team. But later on, you're going to hear from one of my colleagues about exactly where our students end up. And it is a really exciting time to be in journalism, so much more than when I graduated at that time. And it's a pleasure, really, to have come away from daily journalism. I did some magazine. I worked at Scholastic News and wrote news for kids for a while before I started teaching full-time and doing administrative work here running this program. In a lot of ways, I still feel like I'm very much in the middle of the cutting edge of journalism in this school, because we are really so ahead of so many other news organizations and institutions in terms of investigative and data reporting. And it's a thrill to be here because I'm still learning. And in fact, I'm still running a newsroom. Tuesday night, we're going to be here doing some really exciting coverage of the election. It's going to be a long night, and it just makes me feel like I'm still in the thick of things. Our students are going to be doing some pretty fantastic multimedia work. Please check it out on our website. The part-time program is very much, in case you were wondering, the very same degree as the full-time. It's just that it's spread out over 2 years, which should really excite you because it means that you get to be part of this community of journalists for that much longer. I loved it, and especially after being an undergraduate for a while and, kind of taking a little bit of those perks for granted, you really can come back into a school environment as a student and take full advantage of this wonderful thing called student status, which makes you eligible for internships and fellowships and scholarships and all these great opportunities. And our part-time students, depending on how flexible their schedules are, can really make the most of all of that. They take essentially one class a semester, except for one semester when they have to take a few courses that are lecture oriented, the law class and the ethics class. But other than that, the reporting classes are sort of taken one at a time. They start in the summer, and they are, with a few exceptions, mostly integrated with the full-timers. So you're really, involved in the curriculum, taking courses with the same students. There will always be offerings, whether it's reporting or radio or actually reporting or video and multimedia storytelling at night. But some of these courses, especially the ones that are, very visually oriented, simply because we need the sunlight for shooting a good deal of time, will be a full day, and so your choices, may have to, call for a little flexibility. Is it possible to work full time and do the part-time program? Yes, but what I tell students and what you'll read on the website is that this is not a night school. This school is alive all day long, every day, and a lot of times we have lectures and meet and greets with everyone from the Pulitzer jurors to the editors-in-chief of some of the most important newspapers and magazines in the country that can only happen during the day simply because they're really busy at night with their deadlines. So it is important to have some flexibility in your schedule, but you can, as I did, maintain a full-time job. The goal would be to transition, because I know a lot of you are here because you want to move away from the jobs that you're doing. You've graduated, you've worked for a bit, you know what it is, if nothing else, what you don't want to do, and you know that you're passionate about writing and storytelling, and you want to be engaged in this city and in this country in a different way. Well, then this class, this experience is a way to give you sort of a baptism of fire and move you out of that realm and into something so exciting. I had the best time when I was in the journalism program. I did not sleep. I did not go to the movies. I did not watch TV, but I did not miss any of it because everything that I was doing, whether it was an election, whether it was, a murder case in Queens or, even a press conference at the mayor's office, it was just thrilling. And these days, it's even more so because of all the ways that you have to tell stories. So come and visit me, and we can talk about how to do this program. If it sounds daunting, that's probably good. And that means that you're excited and you can do it. So get in touch with me, and we will talk. Stay away from the germs.
I'll hold it at a distance. Hi, I'm Andy Tucker. I'm the director of the Communications PhD program. Anyone here interested in the PhD? Great. Well, as Christine said, we'll go off after this session and have a conversation about the particular structure of the PhD program, which is quite different than the rest of it. It's not that we're going off and plotting in secret with a cabal of people. It's a completely different kind of thing. But to give you an idea, the PhD program is a very typical academic program. It is not journalism. It is not super duper advanced journalism. You don't need to have a journalism background or a journalism degree to apply, although many people do. And in fact, we often have students who have done an MS in this school become interested in exploring things in a little more depth, in a little more scholarly way, and end up coming into our program. What we are is a multidisciplinary program that allows students to put together a course of study drawing on the resources of almost any of Columbia's graduate divisions to put together a course of study that works for them. They can take courses in sociology, in political science, in the law school, in international affairs, in regional studies. And a few core courses here in the communications program. We don't have a lot of courses called Communications 4001. We don't offer a long list of courses like that. Some other schools do. Most other communications programs are much more conventional, lots of courses in their own department. What we offer is the flexibility, but we also impose the responsibility to students to figure out a more wide-ranging, more interdisciplinary way to explore ideas that interest them. It usually takes between 5 years and 7, 8, 9 years. You will do 2 or 3 years of coursework to begin with. You will sit for a series of exams and fulfill some other requirements, and then you'll write your dissertation, which is the fun part. And the students here are working on everything from, a lot of people are interested in various aspects of digital journalism and public life, digital journalism and civic participation. Political polarization is a topic many are interested in now. But we have people who have worked on media and reconciliation in the former Yugoslavia, or the history of literary journalism in Latin America, or the evolution of the photographic pose, I can tell you more when we get upstairs. They've come for, many of them are interested in teaching. Many of them end up having jobs. We have an amazing job placement rate. Something like half of all of our graduates are now in tenure-track jobs or tenured. But we also have people who are not interested in an academic life and ready to go off and interested in doing something else. So we have people doing research. We have several graduates who have their own research firms. We have people working in government, people working in finance, people working in industry, people who are writing books, people who are going back and working on journalism. So it's a program that offers a very different kind of experience than many traditional communications PhD programs. It's very small. It's very selective. Those of you who come upstairs, we can talk more about how to apply and what we're looking for. But it is it's a different experience from both the MS program and many other communications programs. It occurs to me I forgot to tell you anything about me, so let me finish up with that. I have a background in both journalism and history. I have a PhD in American Studies from NYU. I've written 2 books that basically look at one of them is about the beginning of the commercial mass press in New York. The other is looking at family stories and how they reflect the American experience, based in part on my own family stories. I have worked as a journalist in television documentary at PBS and at ABC News. And I was a political speechwriter for a little while. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Weiner, and I teach in the MA program. How many of you, anyone here interested in the MA program coming in? Great, great. So I started out as a magazine writer and a magazine editor, but I really wanted to go deep and write books. And that's what I did. I spent 20 years as an independent writer and wrote 6 books. And then about a dozen years ago, the opportunity came up to come here to teach in this MA program. And it was, I thought, just a perfect idea for Columbia Journalism School, because it offers you a chance to do what I have always found most appealing myself in journalism, which is to go really deep into something. You get excited about a particular story or a particular field, and you just really want to pour it on. You want to get as much of it as you can and then get across as much of it as you can, and if it takes a couple of years to write a book, so be it. My first books looked at the state of the earth and global warming back in the 1980s. And I've always felt really grateful that I had the chance to do that, to go really deep into a subject. It becomes part of you then. When you're just doing a daily story and then another daily story and then another, it doesn't necessarily bite as deep as it does when you really, really live it like that. So the MA program is a chance to do that. People come here often with a few years of experience, some even with decades of journalism experience, some who have already gotten really excited about journalism in college and have done a lot, maybe with college newspaper, maybe with freelancing, and so we sometimes take people who are right out of college. But for the most part, it's people a few years out. And what we do is we sort of divide the year into lectures from outside experts and lectures by faculty here who talk about the special challenges of the different beats that we treat in the MA. There's an MA politics concentration, an MA business, an MA arts and culture, and an MA Science and the Environment and Medicine, which is the one that I teach in with my colleague Marguerite Holloway, who put the program together. So your typical week with us, you're spending one morning talking about your work and the work of great journalists within your special interest. You're spending another morning with, in my class, a great scientist from Columbia or NYU or elsewhere. And am I not talking loud enough for you? Can you hear me okay in the back? Okay. It's an intense program, it's an exciting program, and it's a demanding program. People spend a lot of time on the stories, on the reading, on the interviewing, and the centerpiece of the year is a thesis, usually a written thesis, long form, 8,000 words or so, on a topic of your choice. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about the year, and many students feel that way too, because you work with a faculty member. I think the mic just got cranked up. Is this still okay, the volume? So you work one-on-one with a faculty member. You might meet once a week or once every 2 weeks to talk about your progress. So you're getting this very intensive kind of mentoring that journalists used to get years ago, old school mentoring and old school press, and it's very hard to come by now. And many of those theses end up being published in interesting places. So some of our star graduates have developed those theses into books. One of them, Dan Egan, has a book coming out very soon from Norton called The Death and Life of the Great Lakes. And that project, which he worked on here as a thesis, has now been a Pulitzer Prize finalist twice. So maybe the book itself will be the charm there. And others have published in The Atlantic and Harper's and Slate and other places. There are graduates of the MA program really now that we've been going for 11 years, in leading positions in journalism all across the board, from television to radio to print to the web. And I think it's a unique opportunity if that appeals to you. And I want to say, just on behalf of the MA Science program, that you shouldn't be intimidated and feel like you have to know science coming in. All you need is an interest. All you need is a sense of curiosity about it and a feeling that maybe you'd like to explore it. I was an English major myself. It's possible to dive into these things and to get them and then to share them. And you have an advantage even if you're coming at it fresh and you're excited. So I hope some of you will get in touch. And my email here is jw2345@columbia.edu. Easy to remember. All right, thanks.
Jonathan, we also had one question on the live stream about how students who might be interested in data, how much of that is incorporated in the MA program?
That's an increasing interest here, and Marguerite Holloway, who I mentioned, who I teach the MA science course with, has gotten particularly interested in data and is doing innovative things. So yes, that's becoming more and more a part of the program.
Thank you all very, very much. We're going to take a few questions now from both our New York-based audience here, and I've also got some questions that people have been asking on the live stream as well. So I'd like to open this up for questions about programs and curriculum. We will address admissions, requirements, financial aid, TOEFL, IELTS, and career kinds of questions later in the program. And we'll also, our next panel is a student panel. But right now, if you have any questions about program, curriculum, that sort of thing.
If you're in the MA program, are any of the MS classes available to you as well?
The question is, if you're in the MA program, are any of the MS classes available to you as well?
Only a few. You really have a very full load in the MA, and you get quite a smorgasbord of opportunities. I should have mentioned that you do take some classes elsewhere in the university. So if you're really interested in, say, covering medicine, you can actually take some courses with the medical students uptown, and that's very cool. So you really have a lot to do within the MA, but there are a few exceptions. There's a wonderful book writing course here taught by Sam Friedman, and every year 1 or 2 of the MA students are accepted into that course. It's a selective course, but it's an MS course, and they take that as an extra push toward a book.
Elena, did you also have?
Oh, it's basically that one, and also that it's a full day, so it's a lot, but it is available.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, that the difference between the Masters of Science program and the Master of Arts program is that the Master of Science is for students who don't necessarily have a lot of experience in journalism as opposed to students who have maybe done a little bit of journalistic work, not necessarily in the professional field, but maybe as writing for a blog or college students. That would be considered as real-time experience that could be included in the Master of Arts program, because I was under the impression that that's not necessarily the experience that the Master of Arts program is looking at.
So the question for the live stream is, who are the students that we're looking for in the MS as opposed to the MA program, and what type of experience do you need to have for each? And Anne, maybe if you could touch on the MS, and Jonathan, I'm going to ask you then to talk about the MA. And I'll also just mention to my audience here in New York, which I should have done sooner, we have a microphone in the back, and if you would like, in the center aisle here, if you'd like to ask a question, I invite you to go to the microphone. That way it'll be easier for the live stream audience also to participate. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of experience, if you're applying for the MS program, we have everything from like zero experience, although most applicants at least have done something in undergrad, worked for the college newspaper or radio station or something like that, to people who have worked for several years as journalists. But maybe they've worked somewhere where there wasn't, there weren't editors really doing much supervision. I've definitely had students, who've arrived here and said, I get no feedback on, what I've been writing here, and I know I have a lot to learn, even though I worked there for 3 years. So they're still kind of at a more of a beginning level. And I'm just thinking about some of the students I've had this fall, especially some of the students who are coming from other countries where they may have actually worked for a newspaper or a TV station or something for several years, but again, as with some news organizations here, they just didn't feel like they were professionally challenged or getting the kind of mentorship and supervision that they wanted. What you get in the MS program is like an avalanche of critique from us. We have seminars. We're talking about, how do you interview people? How do you find sources? How do you verify the information that you're getting in your reporting? But then we send you out, to find the stories, find the sources, report them, write them, give them to us, and we will edit them in huge detail. You're going to get feedback and editing like you're probably never going to get again. And so that's really, the value of the learning experience in the MS program. So even if you've worked somewhere for a few years, it might be the right choice for you, but I think I'll let Jonathan talk more about MA and who should go there.
So they do sort of shade into each other. The MA student is typically somebody who's spent at least a few years working on working as a professional journalist. But as I mentioned, a couple of students each year, or maybe just one a year in each of the concentrations, has done so much work as an undergraduate has already sort of caught fire with a particular interest that we decide that student is ready for the MA. But if you've just written a few blog posts or written a couple of articles for your school newspaper in college, probably you should be considering the MS rather than the MA. Because the MS program is the program that's going to ground you in the basic school skills of journalism. And we're looking now in the MA at the specialized skills that you need when you're going deep into one beat, really. And those can be very varied. The kinds of skills that you need to work on to cover artists and and art movements and cultural changes. Those are pretty different from what you need to cover the environment, say, or a physicist's breakthrough. So we're looking for people with more experience typically than the MS, some years more.
I have a question from the live stream about the dual degree programs, asking how you accomplish the work in the dual degree programs. And basically, Columbia also offers dual degree programs with the business school, the law school, the School of International and Public Affairs, and the religion department at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, in addition to the program with computer science. The computer science and journalism program is a bit special. The coursework is more integrated, but you will complete coursework both at the journalism school in the Master of Science program, as well as the coursework in the computer science master's degree program, so that you'll come out with two master's degrees, one in computer science, one in journalism. The other programs work very similarly, but for those programs you have to apply to both programs, and you will be in residence at each of the two schools, assuming that you're admitted to them, so that you will come out with both degrees. And those programs generally cut off about a semester if you're in one of the dual degree programs. I also had a question about financial need. We will come to that a little bit later in the program. We also have a question about the number of PhD positions available, and I'll just say that right now for the entire group, we take 4 people for the PhD program each year. There are about 26 who are here at the school at any given time. I can take one more question from the audience here, and then Professor Tucker is going to take the people interested in the doctoral programs with her, and we will continue our live stream here, but a second live stream will pick up with the people who are interested in the doctoral program. Any other questions about curriculum? Go ahead.
Do the international degree programs ever usually a second semester, I think? The ones in, so you're in one in sciences school.
So,
Sciences Po, yeah.
yeah,
Yes, okay, so.
and if you could repeat the question, please.
Yes, so the question was about dual degree programs with other universities beyond Columbia. We have 2 of those. One is Sciences Po in Paris, and the other is the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. And Sciences Po, if you come here, there's usually an information session about it early in fall, and I remember seeing it weeks ago already. I don't know what their deadlines are, but you would be here studying for a year and meanwhile would apply for one of the positions at Sciences Po. And I think you find out about that in the spring. And we do have a few students who go on and do that after graduation. So they graduate in May, and I think the school year is roughly the same. So they, sometime in the summer, they go to Paris and they continue that study for a year. With South Africa, it's a little more complicated because their academic year is quite different, calendar year. And so we've had, far fewer people going on and doing that, but that is an option.
Okay. I am going to say thank you to our faculty. You guys were great. We really appreciate that you were able to take the time to join us this morning. For those of you who are interested in the doctoral program, you can go with Professor Tucker. And if you are finished up there and would like to rejoin the group afterwards, you're very welcome to do that.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to invite my student panel to come up next. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves to you, and I'm going to ask that they tell you where they're from, what kind of prior journalism experience, well, also which program that they're in, what kind of prior journalism experience they might have had, and then I'll ask them to describe a little bit about what they're doing here, which specialization they're in, if they're in one of the specializations, and then just to talk generally about the program. And of course, there will be plenty of time for questions, because I know that this is the group that you really want to talk to. Okay, I'm going to start. Courtney, if you would start just by introducing yourself.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Brown. I'm a student in the part-time MS program. I split my time between Columbia and CNBC. I work on a morning show at CNBC. I wanted to come to Columbia because I have a very fast-paced job, and I really wanted to make sure that the core journalism skills that I had learned in undergrad sort of became second nature. I started to feel that I was losing them after being out of school for 2 years, so I decided to come back to Columbia to kind of refine those skills.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Watson. I am in the full-time MS program. I went to Columbia undergrad, graduated in 2015, and then worked for the NFL Network producing features for Game Day Morning before coming here. I came because in undergrad I didn't get a proper journalism education or degree, and I just felt like to be successful in this industry, this is something that I valued and something that I really was interested in. And I also wanted to become a better writer and a reporter, and I kind of felt myself climbing up the producer ladder really quickly, and I wanted to find a way to kind of transition those skills and really just kind of bring it all together to be the best reporter that I can be. So I decided to come back, and I'm very excited to be here. And I'm from Orlando, Florida, so if anyone's from Florida, that's fine. And I think that's it, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Garcia. I'm in the MA Arts and Culture program. Before coming here, I was a television anchor and a reporter in El Paso, Texas, and I covered politics for 10 years along the U.S.-Mexico border. And really, I came to Columbia because I was wanting to really go deep on stories. I wanted to essentially find my voice as a long-form writer, and I was, producing daily content and, covering stories every single day, and I found myself just really wanting to go deeper and deeper and deeper on stories, and I came to the MA program to transition to a digital platform so that I could go deeper with stories instead of just churning out daily content.
Courtney, maybe you could tell us also a little bit about what you're doing now, the kinds of courses that you're taking as a part-time student, and what you're finding generally as a student here.
Sure. So I'm a first-year part-time student, so I started the program back in May with kind of the immersive digital training. I did some work with radio, which I'd never done before, never thought I would like it, but ended up loving it. And then I moved into reporting, which we got assigned a beat. I covered Park Slope. Again, I went to school in New York, but I rarely left Manhattan, so it was really great to kind of get out of my comfort zone and cover a different part of New York City. And I ended up learning a lot about New York as a whole and about the types of stories that I like to cover. And it was really great because I got an opportunity to publish several pieces that I wrote on a site called the Brooklyn Ink, so that was really great. I also just finished my Video 1 course, which was incredible. I loved the professor. We were required to do one traditional TV package a week, which of course was definitely challenging, being up, working part-time. And I think Elena mentioned earlier that this is not a night school. I would have never been able to do the assignments if I was treating Columbia like a night school. So that was awesome. And I have about like 5 pieces to show for the work that I did. So that was great. I think that's it.
Oh, so my coursework is very similar to Courtney's. It's just timing-wise, it's very different. So I just kind of entered, I'd say, my second quarter, because, yeah, we're going to call it as quarters. So I had, in the month of August, we had our boot camp, which we worked with video, audio, writing, social media was huge, which was really cool to kind of learn how to kind of get involved on all the different platforms and make sure that your work is being presented and just allowing people to see it through social media. That's really huge right now. So we did that. We did recording on mobile devices. We had to do features and stories on our phones entirely. Editing, recording, audio, everything on the phone. So that was really cool to do. And then after my reporting class, after boot camp, I had my reporting class, which was 7 weeks. And I also we have essentials. So we have business, ethics, law, and history. So I had business and law for my first 7 weeks with reporting. And we just actually switched, and so now I'm in my Video 1 course that Courtney was talking about, and I am in ethics and history. So, yeah, it's very similar, but timing, of course, because part-time to full-time. So it's fast, but definitely doable.
Yeah, so my coursework is a lot different. In the MA program, we have it's a very, very full week, a pretty intense program. So we have 4 classes, and your thesis counts as like a 5th class technically, because you're supposed to really devote time every week for your thesis, starting as early as the fall. So our main class is your cohort. So if you are in the politics program or in the science program, or I'm in the arts and culture, these are very small cohorts, usually no bigger than about 12 people, and you see them twice a week for about 3.5 hours, and you immerse yourself in the topics that surround the kind of journalism you want to cover in science or in politics. So, you have 6 hours of pretty intense discussion a week, or almost 7 hours of pretty intense discussion a week with a very small group of people about art or about politics or about science. And then we have evidence and inference. Every MA student has to take this course. This is a course that borrows principles from social science and implements them into journalism. So it's this very critical, challenging way to look at journalism. This very it's elevated questioning, and it's really, I think, in just the 2 months that I've been here, already made me a better reporter. And the other class is an MA Essentials class, and this is data skills, data and investigative skills. So you go into very advanced Excel, analyzing and gathering big data through Excel, and then also computer coding to extract data from the internet. And so it's that class, in the last 2 months that I've been here, has equipped me with skills that, working 10 years in a newsroom before, and I did investigative stories. And I, tried the best that I could to like analyze big data with the resources that I had, but there's just no way I could have learned what even in the last 2 months I've learned here with the data class that I'm taking. Already, like, I know that I have like very tangible, practical skills that I could take to the next newsroom I work in with that class. And then the fourth class is an elective in any other school at Columbia that you want to take. And I'm taking like a minimalism class, like art minimalism. So, it's kind of like half for fun, half because I also want to cover arts a little bit. So, yeah, that's what my week is like.
What I'd like to do is take a couple of questions, because I know that some of you have questions. Usually this is one of the places where we have the most questions. So I'd like to invite you, any questions that you all have, to the mic if you've got. There's a microphone right there in the middle aisle. Are there particular questions that you'd... Yes.
So mine starts at a core because I'm interested in the part-time program. I actually work at NBC right now. So I guess a lot of what I've been thinking about is how you figure out when during the day. I mean, you said you worked on the morning show, so your hours are probably shifted, but like I work 10 to 6. So how do you manage the time to then or take off? Like say your executives say I need to go out and shoot something for the video and then be able to.
Sure. So the question was about time management. How do I balance school and work? So you're right. I do work on a morning show, so that is kind of an advantage. I get in about 4 a.m. I am able to leave by 2 p.m. But even then, some of the stories that I want to cover are happening at noon or they're happening at 1. So I think it's really important to kind of develop a great relationship with your boss, which I'm sure you have a good relationship with your boss. NBC is great in terms of management. I would just be very open with them about what you need to do. And I think there are a lot of people here who you can speak to about kind of figuring out your schedule and figuring out how to make things work. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy, but it's so worth it. What do you do at NBC? Do you work in a newsroom or?
I'm an associate producer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I just think there are so many things you can learn here and you will learn here. And I think time management is one of those important skills, right? If you want to be in the news world, you got to know how to manage your time. And I think that's an important skill that I've learned here. And I've learned to communicate with my boss better, and it's about negotiating, right? So if I have to leave earlier one day, maybe a day where I don't have class or I'm not reporting, I can stay a little bit later. And my boss has been very great about recognizing the fact that I'm going to school to be a better journalist for the show. I work in a very dark control room. People are yelling, things are moving fast. I can't afford to make an ethics mistake. And I think that my boss realizes that, and he knows that me going to Columbia J School is going to make me a better employee.
Other questions?
So I was curious if you could speak to at all the benefits or disadvantages of maybe going to J School directly out of undergrad versus maybe spending a couple years in the workforce, and where that experience or does continuity would kind of help out?
Okay, so I took a year to work, and I think that for me, that was the best decision, just personally, just because it allowed me to see what was happening in the newsroom and in the industry. And then when I'm then coming to grad school, I was more kind of focused on what I really wanted to get out of my time here. But I think for every individual, it's different. I have plenty of friends in the program who just graduated in May and are now here. And I think all of our mindsets are the same in the sense of, we came here to be successful, we came here to learn. So I wouldn't say that there's like disadvantages or advantages. It's just more of, I mean, if you see what's happening in the field and you see what's happening in the industry, you can only use that to then kind of better yourself and kind of enhance those skills while you're here. But then again, while you're here, you're going to learn all of those skills. So when you go to work and when you're learning how to, when it's like you're in a meeting and they're like, okay, well, give me your pitches for the week, you know how to do it. Whereas I would say, like, for example, last year, I knew what a pitch was, but had I known how to, like, clearly design and, like, just kind of put everything I need in the pre-reporting that it requires before, that would have helped so much last year. But it's kind of one in one where either way, I think you're kind of in a great position. But yeah, I mean, all of us came after working, but I do, yeah.
Yeah, speaking about the MA program specifically, for me, I was, in the same newsroom, which is an anomaly. I was in the same newsroom for 10 years, from the time I was like 19 to 29, worked there even through college. And, I learned a lot, but even if you're not with the same employer for that long, even if you're in the workforce with a few different employers spanning a few years, you're never going to get the chance to immerse yourself so deeply in journalism and in one story than you are in the MA program. I mean, it's been so refreshing for me as a journalist to essentially like fall back in love with the craft, and to just like eat, breathe, and sleep journalism, and the journalism that I want to cover in the voice that I want to cover. And it's, you're just never going to get that opportunity anywhere else, I think, to just sort of take a step back and say, for the next year, I'm not just going to like really hone my craft, but like I'm going to find my authoritative voice as a journalist in this field that I want to cover, in arts and culture and politics, in science. And it's just really refreshing.
Kirsten, we've got a question from the live stream. Somebody would like to hear a little bit more about your experience with data and data journalism, and whether you had data experience beforehand in your journalism, and how you feel about somebody coming in with no data experience at all. And I'll preface that also by saying that in the MS program, we have students coming in with no journalism experience whatsoever. So no data, no investigative, no documentary, no high school or college experience on the school newspaper, radio, or television station. So the program is designed to take somebody who knows absolutely nothing about journalism, but who is a good writer, who is curious, who's determined, who loves storytelling, and turn them into a good journalist. But Kirsten, if you could talk a little bit more about your experience with that.
Okay, so I am not in the data journalism specialization, but just with sports, numbers are obviously a very important factor of the game. So I would say I dabble in it in the sense of I'm using it to learn how to fully express what the numbers mean and the impact that they have within an article, and whether that's kind of through graphs or like even for like my master's project, I've been discussing with my master's advisor just kind of how do we kind of bring this all together. But there are students, I know that there's breakfasts within that you can go to and that you can learn how to code, and that's if you're not it's for those who are in the specialization, but also who are not. So you can go to the breakfasts and learn how to code. I have actually a classmate who just did a story that was completely data driven, and he had this really cool and interactive chart that was involved with it, and just how he brought that all together. And he actually learned that through going to these breakfast meetings. So there's definitely opportunity to learn. I would say before I didn't have any experience in it. I guess just the basics of how I use data to kind of tell a story. And that was really kind of working with my research team at the NFL and kind of talking about how we can, like how I can really tell a story, like I was saying, off of the numbers. But here I would say it's definitely where you can kind of dive into it. And there's so many, like these meetings, there's so many other kinds if you're interested in not only data, but like so many different breakfasts and meetings that you can go to and just learn those skills just to have. Maybe you don't want to necessarily use them. Maybe you are interested in learning how to code with Java or C++, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities. So it's with or without it, everyone coming in is in a really good spot.
Thank you. We've got a question in the back there. Go ahead, speak
Hi,
directly.
I just want to make the observation that you're all women, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm curious what the percentage of female journalists are in the school and how that affects like just the dynamic. And then also, how did you decide specifically on your focus based on little or no background? And yeah, I guess for students starting later, myself, I'm, out of college for a while, but I'm looking to stream together my experience of arts and culture and performance and a whole lot of different fields.
Just to touch on the female-male ratio, 75% of the students here are female, 25% are male.
And I see that in all my classes, which is incredible because sadly, that statistic is not mirrored, I can say, in my newsroom. So it's really great to come to Columbia and see not only gender diversity, but racial diversity as well, which is, again, something that is a huge, huge issue in in the news world. As far as, can you repeat the second part of your question?
Yeah, deciding on your focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've always known that I wanted to do video TV in some form. I was really excited to come to Columbia to kind of learn how to incorporate my writing skills into my video skills. Where I work, writing isn't a huge part of what I do, and if I do write, it's very short. Obviously, TV writing is very different from like long form print reporting. So when I came here, I knew I wanted to do that. But as far as topically, you said you were interested in arts and culture. Yeah. I'm thinking that MS is. Yeah. Well, I would say that I kind of learned later in life that I was really interested in business and tech reporting. And so I knew coming to Columbia, I kind of wanted to focus on that. So I've been trying to incorporate that in all of the stories that I pitch for reporting. I mentioned earlier that for my reporting class, I covered Park Slope. So one of the stories I did was how the influx of high rises was impacting small businesses in Park Slope. And so I kind of got my business focus in that way. And for one of my video class, I did a profile on Dumbo, Brooklyn, which has kind of become this like hub for startups in New York, right? So I would say I've been trying to incorporate the topics that I'm interested in my pitches and my daily assignments, and that's honestly been my favorite part of Columbia. I was assigned a beat, but I was able to kind of dabble in whatever topic, whatever stories that interested me as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
And just to feed off of that, in the MS program, even though like arts and culture is specific within the MA program, you're totally free to write about and report on what you're interested in. Like I'm all about sports. I was an athlete in college, and for some reason I have always just been like, that's what I want to do. And like Courtney, I did know kind of coming in what I wanted to focus on. Obviously, like I said, I wanted to be a reporter, so I'm doing broadcasts and stuff like that. But there are so many students here who are new to journalism and who kind of have come in and they're just like, I don't necessarily know I know that I want to do journalism, but I don't know what I want to do within journalism. And there are opportunities for you to find that while you're here. Like Courtney said, kind of getting into audio, that was new for me as well. And that like I ended up doing my final reporting piece as a 7-minute audio piece. In video, like kind of knew those skills, but it's every day you're learning. I'm now learning how to do a news package instead of a feature, which are very different, and stand-ups and things that are are very new to me. But it's you'll definitely get to you'll pitch your stories you have a beat within reporting, but for video and your writing class, you're free to kind of incorporate however you want to do your stories. And so there's so many opportunities for you to decide. You never know. You may think you want to be a writer and you'll try audio, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I like how this comes together. It's cool to hear. When you can tell a story without video, without images, and just kind of impact someone, it's a beautiful thing. So you'll definitely find your voice here.
Maria, perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the differences in the coursework that you're taking as an MA student, the more focus, and also a little bit about the background of some of your colleagues in the program, just to give people a little idea of the different kinds of skills that people arrive with in the MA program as well.
Sure. Everyone in the MA program has a significant amount of experience. I know one of my classmates, not in arts and culture, but in the business concentration, came straight from undergrad, but she did quite a bit of business reporting during her undergrad. And then we have, people who have been writing for magazines for several years. One of my colleagues in my cohort was an editor for T Magazine. We have people who have been writing for the Wall Street Journal for a few years in different bureaus. So there's an array of experience in the MA. Everybody in the MA, knows how to, do the basics and journalism and a little more. So they know how to interview, they know how to write, they know how to be a journalist, but they want to sort of take it to the next level. They want to sort of be a leading journalist. They want to eventually, write a book or really hone in on their specialization. For me, I knew that I wanted to cover issues relating to women of color, and so that's why I came to the arts and culture specialization. So yeah, there's a ton of people with different kinds of experience, and the coursework, like I said, it's very different from the MS. There's still ways, if you, for example, are in the MA program and you want to still get some of the skills training that the MS has, there's a ton of stuff going on at the J School every week. I mean, seminars and workshops and visitors coming in to teach you how to do stuff. So you can extract a lot of skills that don't come from your classes or your instructors just from being at the J School and showing up to these events every week, even if you're in the MA program. But the MA program, the curriculum does include also, like I said, some practical skills that you'll be able to take with you, data reporting and deep investigative stuff. And it really makes you just a sharper thinker, I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, if I had the brain skills that I have now just in these 2 months, I could have covered this story this way, 2 years ago. So yeah, it's intense, but it's really worth it.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question from our audience. Yes.
I'm very interested in the MA program. I'm a professional writing journalism major now in my undergrad, and I'll begin my novel with my honors research next semester. And so I wanted your opinion if you happen to have taken the book writing course, or if you know maybe your classmates who are taking it, and you kind of give me an outlook on that experience.
Go ahead.
So I'm not taking the book writing course, but I know a few people who actually, there was a workshop yesterday with Sam Friedman, and they went, and I know some people are trying to get into that course. I honestly, I don't know much about that course, but the people whom I've spoken to who are on that track, I know that, for example, David Haydu, who is our professor for the arts and culture concentration, he just published a book this last month in mid-October. He's a pretty revered music writer and critic, and so, you know, I know that some of us in the arts and culture concentration have had conversations with him about publishing and about, you know, writing a book. And even a Spencer Fellow who's here at the journalism school, she told me that she had a meeting recently with the dean, who is very accessible, Dean Cole, about writing her book, and that he gave her like very like practical, pragmatic advice that really helped her in terms of like how she was going to format her book, how she was going to eventually get it published. So like there are so many people here with such wonderful experience that it's like even just being here and, you know, being advantageous of the synergy around you and like and realizing that you have access to these like leading journalists, and that you can sort of pick their brain about your book is really, really valuable.
And I'll just comment a little bit further on that. The question was about a book writing course that Professor Sam Friedman teaches here. That is a course to get into the course. He wants you to have either a book proposal in hand that a publishing company has already accepted, or he wants you to have a very good idea of a book proposal. I mean, a book proposal is one of the things that he wants to see, and that course is really by application, because he works very specifically with the students who are in it. Interestingly, we did have one science MA student who was a journalist of at least 20 years of experience and also an award-winning journalist. And he took the book writing course. He said it was the hardest thing that he had ever done to try to work on the MA program and the work that he had to do for it, plus to deal with this book writing course. So it's absolutely a challenge. But as Maria said, the faculty here are extremely accessible, so that even if you happen not to be taking a class with a particular person, they are very, very happy to talk with you if you arrive in their office for office hours or make an appointment to talk with them. You know, if there's an article that you're considering doing and want some guidance because that person has particular expertise in that area, they will be happy to help you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Courtney, Kirsten, Maria, very, very much. We appreciate all of your comments, and we are going to move on now to Gina Bubian, who is our Associate Director of the Office of Career Services. She has a lot of information that I am sure that you're interested in.
Juicy information.
Oh, got it. All right, she's going to plug in a PowerPoint.
Brief break here. Hi. Can you help me with that then? One second. I need this. What, slideshow?
Just go play from start.
That won't work. Can I get out of here? What happens if I, what happens if I click on this? Brief technical difficulties. 1 second. I mean, that's okay with me.
While we're sorting out those technical difficulties, let me just take any other questions that you might have right now. Yes.
All my writing, in addition to having been in Spanish, because I have worked in Spanish media, has been, for TV.
Right. Question then about somebody who has been working in television and in particular in Spanish media. What kinds of things are we looking for then in the application? I'm going to touch on some of this once Gina is finished. So, but I'm going to come back. But remind me if I don't answer your question. You ready to
Okay,
go?
yes, ready.
Gina's ready to go.
Yes, so good
Gina
morning.
Bubian.
Nice to see you. So I'm part of a small team of career development officers here at Columbia, and we're all former journalists who give very close guidance to students once they're in the program. And we give one-on-one guidance. We bring in a lot of speakers, and we hold a lot of workshops on job skills. And we also put on an enormous career expo every spring. And I invite you to look at the website and poke around our pages and watch the video, so you'll get a sort of a sense of the scope. It's definitely the biggest pure journalism job fair in the country in terms of companies that attend. 150 companies came in April, and it's very exciting. So first, a reality check. There is no guarantee of a job when you come to J-School. We don't know what the journalism job market is going to be like next summer, or the summer of 2018, or the summer of 2019. It's the kind of business that it's very dynamic, and we don't know which companies will rise from the ashes and save themselves with some innovations. We don't know which companies will fold, and we don't know what kinds of jobs will be available, because even job titles will change, job categories will change and arise even during the year while a student is here. It's an extremely dynamic field, and it's a very exciting time to get into the business. Regardless of all the flux and all the dynamism in the business, Columbia Journalism School students really do well in their careers after J-School. So I'm going to show you some statistics today and try to put them in context and give you a broader feel for what's happening in the industry and what's happening just with our students in particular. So as of graduation, I hope you can see these slides. As of graduation, the class of 2016, 71.5% of students had plans lined up to start as a graduation. And when I say plans, it's a broad category because we're talking about, graduate students who do a number of things. We're talking about jobs, we're talking about internships, we're talking about students who go back to school for another degree, we're talking about students who perhaps start their own media startup. There's always 2 or 3 people who want to be, media entrepreneurs when they get out of here. So it's a broad range of categories. The international students were 73.5%, lined up after graduation, compared to 70% for the U.S. students, green card holders. Now, this is a figure that we're talking like small numbers, but this is a figure that really changes a lot. In 2015, it was literally exactly flip-flopped, where the U.S. students did better than the international students, and then in 2014, it was flip-flopped again. So we don't get too hung up. I just wanted to show you what happens. It's important also to note that our figures are as of this period around graduation. It's like we compile the data upon graduation, and it takes us about a couple of weeks to write it up. So it's by say June 1 is where what these statistics are reflecting. And we're the only professional school, graduate school at Columbia that takes the temperature of the graduating class that soon. Like the law school waits 11 months later, the business school waits 3 months later. The reason why we do it when we do is because we get 100% reporting. So we just, we're all reporters by training, and so we're obsessed with, getting completely accurate information. So that's why we do that. So this chart is really interesting. This shows you the distribution of positions by media platform. And what you're seeing is a concentration of positions in the 3 media platforms. Digital, which is the red line that's on the ascendance, which completely makes sense to all of us, right? And then the purple line and the blue line are newspaper and online staff, and broadcast and online staff. So looking at that chart, you'll see that newspapers, which is the dark blue line, have kind of held on. Regardless of everyone talking about newspapers, being dead. And broadcast, we've seen like a lot of a lot of vacillation, but they're also, so that's where most of our students go into one of those 3 categories. The green line is magazine, which should not surprise anybody who has been paying attention to the magazine industry. That's definitely been on the decline. And then that bottom turquoise line are wire service jobs. And that's also something that, we're going to keep our eye on it. Not exactly sure what's going on there, but we're thinking that Dow Jones Newswires has something to do with that. Wall Street Journal owns Dow Jones Newswires, and they kind of merged. And so when that happened, there was a lot of consolidation, and now we hear the same things happening with Reuters and Thomson Reuters. So there'll be more contraction there. So we thought we'd also show you, this is a really interesting chart, because what this shows you is that the majority of our students, regardless of the media platform that I just showed you, regardless of what company you're working at, most of our students are hired to be reporters, text reporters and writers, or editors, but mostly reporting. And this is because broadcast companies hire reporters, newspaper companies hire reporters, obviously. Everyone's hiring reporters from the J School. You're also seeing here a very distinct, if you can see it from the back, I'm not sure, but I'll talk it through. The increase in number of video and audio production jobs. So in 2015, those jobs were 1 in 5, 20% basically. Last year, it was 30% of the students said that they were hired primarily to do audio and video. And why that's so interesting is because these are newspapers that are hiring people to do video, or wire services. It's not just the broadcast companies. So there really is this complete, melding of platform, and a lot of the big companies are doing everything. And what you also see here is a very tiny number of students hired to do on-air reporting. And I wanted to just call this out because we have plenty of J-School grads fanned out across the country working in local news, reporting local news on air. But who's interested in on-air reporting jobs? It's always like a good number. So what happens is this is an industry this is a niche within the industry that is not like, it's not a big internship culture. So these are students who want to do that have to kind of wait until graduation to apply for full-time jobs, put their reel together. Assembling your reel is something that often takes at the very end of graduation. You know, as graduation is coming, students are finally having time to work on their reel and send it out. So students do get on-air jobs, but it happens sort of over the summer. And we've got students who took jobs at in Wichita, Kansas, at a small station there, which is a fascinating place to be a reporter these days if you've been following the news and following Kansas budget issues. We have a student in Binghamton, New York. We have a student who took a job at the Telemundo's big station in Boston, which was like a major plum job. Okay, more specifically, breaking down this even more, these are the job titles that we're seeing most commonly. So if you're going to be a text, if you're going to get hired to do text and print reporting, most likely it's reporter. Reporter is the most common job title, but there are other, senior reporter. We do have MA students here with lots of experience, so some of these titles are, beyond the reach of most, rookies, but, some of them are more advanced jobs. These job titles shouldn't come as a surprise for anybody, except of course the data and computational jobs, which, these titles are something that we're all sort of learning as we go, becoming familiar with these jobs ourselves. We had students who were hired to be data journalists, domain experts, developers, even software engineers were hired out of last year's class, content curators. These are jobs that absolutely didn't even exist in newspapers a couple of years ago, and now they do. Another thing I wanted to show you, the purpose of this chart, looks very sparse, but it's intentional because I want you to understand that, so 91% of the class takes a job in journalism. What happens to the other 9%? They go on to another degree program, they take those, engineer jobs or whatever. So what remains is this pie chart. And what I want you to understand here is the dominance of internships as a likely outcome of J-School. This is not a new thing. I've been here 10 years. It's been true the whole 10 years. It was true when I was in grad school. How many years ago? Several decades. I'll be vague on that. But it was the same thing, 30 years ago when I was in school. Internships are very much a part of the culture of journalism. And we liked internships because it's a student's chance to make the big leap to a big company, and it's your chance to get hired after the summer. So we are really, really into internships, and our students do extremely well competing for the very top internships in the country. There are companies that, maybe they don't have a habit of hiring a student after an internship, but you're better off having taken it. Like the Washington Post never hires its interns. The New York Times doesn't hire its interns. The AP, Associated Press, doesn't really hire its interns, but it's a really great thing to get these internships. Plenty of other companies have a really strong tradition of hiring interns, like Reuters, like Bloomberg. So it's like the Miami Herald. Like a lot of places love to hire the interns. Okay, here's a slide that shows you. In your handouts, you probably were supposed to have this list of companies that hired somebody from the class of 2016. That's 111 companies. But I just want to show you that a lot of the big brands hire a bunch of our students. This is, I think, really unusual for one school to be so dominant in certain companies. But, CNN hired 9 people from last year's class. And, NBC, Univision, Wall Street Journal, each took 4 students each. These are almost all internships. The Huffington Post is the exception. Huffington Post hires a handful of people. They don't do the internship thing. They just do jobs. But this is what the school is so great at. It has the brand and the training of the students and the quality of the students is really high, and employers know that, and that's why they come to the J School to hire. Okay, I might as well just talk about pay because everybody knows it's low. And I thought I would just put it in stark terms, get it out there. Yes, internship pay is low, but that has always been the case. You didn't go into this business to become rich, I don't think. You're going into this business because it's incredibly fun and exciting. But But yes, there is a low. So, you know, $7.50 an hour is pitiful and pathetic, and it's a shame. However, I will say that it's temporary. These are internship pay levels. So it's a huge range. And by the way, $7.50 is not some, you know, nonprofit that's just eking by. This was a major broadcast network. And but the student was rewarded with a job at the end. So, and we're seeing full-time jobs in the 35 to 50 range. We're seeing a lot of students offered benefits again. That was definitely sort of something that we noticed employers grab back, you know, during the recession. But now we're seeing more students offered full benefits, health and medical, and retirement. And we're seeing, you know, a huge range with full-time jobs as well. So as you're deciding where to go to grad school, do your research on LinkedIn like I did. So there's a group called Columbia Graduate School of Journalism LinkedIn, and you can search. I think you can search. You probably should be able to search. But I did some of the searching for you just to show you how our students are concentrated at all the big brand names. So to the extent that we've got at least 67 grads employed by the New York Times. Are these recent grads? Of course not. You know, this is where you reach for after years of working hard and winning awards elsewhere, and then you get hired at the New York Times. Unless, of course, you're like a computer scientist and you can get a job straight out of J school. But, you know, we have a lot of students at NPR. We have a lot of students at the Washington Post, at the Daily News. So J school students are everywhere. I would like now to just show you a little bit what the students are doing after graduation. You know, every time a major news story breaks, our students are all over it. For those of you who followed the Panama Papers, which landed with it was like a huge story that landed earlier in the year, there were only a couple news organizations in the United States that were working with the International Consortium on Investigative Journalism, and it was Fusion and the Miami Herald, and in both cases our students were like in charge. It was incredible. So the Panama Papers had this team from Fusion, and they were, the editor was a grad, and 3 of his reporters were grads, yeah, I think, okay, that's right. And then Miami Herald, too, had one of our grads, a recent grad, also sort of shepherding that coverage through, a 2014 grad. So this is not, doing great work. You don't have to wait years. It's not going to be years. It's going to be like only a couple years. So the terrorist attacks in France was another example where I just picked this example just because, when it happened, there was so much activity on the Facebook pages for the group that we just began to notice, wow, our students are all over this story. And I thought I would point out to you some of these students. So, our international students are a very exciting and vital part of the school. They were 40% of the class this year. It's very hard to find full-time work authorization here. You all, international students get to work for a year in the U.S. after they finish a degree, but then most of them go home. So this story sort of showed how well our international students do when they go home. And so I want to just show you a couple of these career trajectories of what happened to some of our students who were reporting the terrorist attacks. So most of them are French, but not all. So Cecile was somebody she is in Paris. She came to Columbia, and after Columbia, she went to Slate in France in a full-time job. It was technically an internship, but it came with full benefits and a full salary. And then now she's the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed France. There was Anoop Kafle, who was from Nepal, actually, and he came to Columbia, and then after Columbia, he was hired at the Atlantic in helping them set up one of their web products, and he was then hired at the Washington Post, and he was sponsored full-time at that point, and now he's deputy editor of BuzzFeed based in London. Louise was a French national who, after Columbia, she got the AP Associated Press Paris Bureau internship, and then she got the ABC exclusive internship that Columbia has with ABC based in London. And now, most recently, I saw her. She's back in Washington, D.C. We also have a lot of career changers. Is anybody here going to be switching careers? Right, we have lawyers, we have teachers, we have a lot of military this year in the class. We usually have a few bankers. We even have doctors every year who are here to learn how to write about science and medical news. So what we have found with our career changers is that your current career oftentimes sort of steers your reporting, or it's, it's a hint that you really love the thing that you were doing, but you don't hate it, all of it, you love pieces of it. So for instance, we had a teacher here named Vicky, who, she had been a high school teacher for 15 years or something like that. And she was a part-time student who got an internship at PBS NewsHour on the weekend. So she was working Saturdays and Sundays at PBS, and now she's the education editor, which makes perfect sense for Vicky. We have a lot of Teach for America students who end up becoming, education reporters. And Roxanne was somebody who was a fresh, she was not that old. She was she had graduated like a year before she started school here, and she'd been in marketing, and she got a job at Time Inc., and now she's the beauty editor at Mimi. So it actually does involve some marketing. So that's what we oftentimes see. We see lawyers who express interest in writing about legal affairs or some or business writing. We see soldiers and former military who want to write on military affairs and the VA and the military budget. So we also have a huge group directly from undergrad, and these are students who haven't had time to work full time in the workforce. They're coming straight from undergrad, and they've usually been very involved in the college newspaper. And so we get a lot of editors-in-chief here and section editors here from undergrad. So Ellen was a Canadian who was the editor-in-chief of the Johns Hopkins newspaper. After Columbia, she got the breaking news internship at the Guardian US. The Guardian US loves Columbia, and they have a bureau in New York City. Now she's back in Canada as a features reporter for the Globe and Mail. Josiah Bates was he was the Metro editor and also the sports editor at the Penn State Daily newspaper. He came here. He decided, no more sports for me. I want to write about race and social justice, and he got an internship at the Marshall Project, which is very prestigious, publication run by Bill Keller. Won a Pulitzer last year, and now he's an NBC News associate. Laura was the opinion section editor at the Red and White. Black and White? I forget what it's called, but it's the University of Georgia newspaper. And she came to Columbia, and then she went right straight back to Atlanta to work at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. There was no job for her at the end of that summer, but they helped her, put in a good word for her, and now she's at the Texas Observer, which is a really great publication in the Capitol. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. Is there time for questions? I'm happy to answer some questions. Yes. The MA, is there a breakdown for the employment statistics for MA? Yeah, last year's MA class was 64% employed, and then MS was low 70s. The reason for the difference is because the MA students are frequently looking for full-time jobs, higher level jobs, and it just takes a while to land. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you speak at all to maybe if there's a marked difference between the outcomes for like people who were like coming their early, mid, or mid-career back to J school and graduate? They never went to journalism school, but they worked as like reporters for like 18 years, and now they want to go to journalism school because they feel like it's a very chaotic situation. But you have a lot of it seems like somewhat anomalous. Not really addressing the demographics, if you have male, female, and you have race, but you don't have like breakdown.
That's true. We don't have age breakdown,
Right.
but we do have the full range of ages here. And so the question was, how do students who are older with much more experience do in the job market? And you will be in a different situation. You're not going to necessarily want to apply for an internship. We get that. We're not going to force you to at all. But yes, a lot of the jobs are internships. So our older students do find their way into better jobs, or sometimes they will hold on to their old job and, have it to go back to and then get promoted or whatever. So, I mean, if you want to ask me more specifics about you specifically, I'll hang out at the end. Okay.
So you said a large portion of the students end up going into like video or production. Would you say that those students are from like a particular specialization, like the documentary program, for example, or if it's...
No, actually, that's a good point. The doc students are not, the students who go into video, are they the documentary students? And no, it's more than just the documentary students. There's several video classes in the curriculum that students take. There's video 1, video 2, and so that's where they come from. A lot of the doc students weren't in these statistics because they're still sort of currently students. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you, in the on-air reporting programs that you showed us,
Uh-huh.
include BuzzFeed News or Vox or like the younger like online reporting?
Yes.
Gina, could you repeat the question for the live stream, please?
Does the video and broadcast, no, the on-air jobs, does that include BuzzFeed and Vox? Well, you named the two companies that actually, I don't think we had anybody go to those two. And this year, everybody wants to work at Vox. It's like every student who comes into our office says they want to work at Vox. So the on-air jobs are at local news stations, like traditional, broadcast stations, either network jobs at the big legacy networks or the smaller local news stations. Mostly. I mean, Wall Street Journal has a video unit. They've taken our students. The Washington Post does as well, and they've taken our students. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. I will spend a little time at the back of the room in case anybody has questions later. Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier, too. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Gina. And, Gina has been working here, as she said, for a good 10 years. And she worked for many years also as a professional journalist. So we're really delighted to have her here and she works a lot with the students who are interested in print careers, digital careers, and then we have other staff people who work with people who are interested in radio, television, that sort of thing. But we're really equipped at this point to handle a very, very broad range of careers. And I might also mention that our faculty are very, very helpful to our students. They have many connections and contacts themselves. They're very often inviting people to come as guest speakers in the classroom. Those guest speakers are always anticipating that the students in the classroom, not only will they have good questions, but that they will be looking to make contact with them to get their business cards, to be able to be in contact with them. The same is true of the wide variety of guest speakers that we have coming to visit the J School, as Gina said, almost every day. You can get a good look at that on the website in the events section to get an idea of the types of people who come here to speak. And those are the things that are on the general website. Our student groups have speakers coming in all the time as well to do brown bag lunch talks, to do 4:30 in the afternoon talks. If there is a journalist who is connected to the J School in one way or another, who happens to be coming through New York just for a few minutes, we often are able to invite them to come in and just have a really quick session with a group of students. And it's journalists who cover many, many different platforms, many different areas of the world, many different topics. And so we try to make as much of that available to the students as possible. So now what I'd like to do is move on to the admission questions. And I want to talk a little bit about the application process. My colleague Taryn Almanzar, who was up with the PhD group, has returned. She is going to talk about scholarships and financial aid. And I know there was one person on the live stream who I promised that we would talk about financial issues. But first I'm going to start with application. The application deadlines, again, all on the website. December 15th is the date to keep in mind if you are thinking about either the Master of Science, the dual degree programs that involve a Master of Science, or the PhD program, December 15th. January 9th is the deadline for the Master of Arts program. And we have one dual degree program that has a January 15th deadline. That is the dual Master of Science with Computer Science, because that one follows the engineering school deadline as opposed to the J school deadline. And I will also say that the dual Master of Science with Computer Science uses the Computer Science Department application. So any of the links, don't be surprised if you go to the website and click on that application link. It will take you to the Computer Science Department and not to journalism, but you'll find the application that you need there. All of the other applications run through the journalism school application. Generally, I encourage you to give yourself a little bit of time to think about your application. Give yourself some time to think about the kinds of essays that you'd like to write. I'll run down just a quick overview of what the pieces of the application are. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you might think about approaching your application. So it's not really any different from any other applications that you've filled out, either for undergraduate or for graduate school. We ask for essays, an autobiographical essay, an essay about your interest in journalism. If you are applying to one of the specialization programs, whether it is in the MS or the MA, you're asked to write a third essay on whatever that specialization happens to be. So whether it's investigative, data, documentary in the MS program, or arts and culture, business and economics reporting, political and global affairs reporting, or science, environmental, and medical reporting in the Master of Arts program. You'll have a third essay to write for that. We ask for your resume. We ask for clips. And I'm going to come back to the clips in a minute. They can be written clips, they can be audio, they can be video. And there are a lot of different kinds of things that you can use for the written clips. So we recognize that there are people coming in with varying amounts of journalism experience. So I'll come back to those clips in just a minute. We also ask for transcripts. So transcripts from every university you ever attended. I'm going to say that again. Every university you ever attended. Why? You may have started at one university, so you might have started at SUNY Binghamton. You may then have transferred to SUNY Albany, or to Cornell, or to Berkeley. The grades that you received at Binghamton do not transfer over. We'll see the credits that the second school accepts, but we don't see the grades. We want to be able to see all of the grades. So send all of your transcripts, without exception. For students who are applying whose transcripts are not in English, we ask for a verbatim translation, so a word-for-word translation. There are a lot of them. We've got lots of people here who speak a lot of different languages. There are still many languages that we can't cover. So we ask for a verbatim English translation of the transcript. That also goes for your clips. If you have writing clips, video, or audio that are in another language, we need an English translation of those. What am I leaving out here? I've said a resume. We're very interested in seeing what you have done. For the Master of Science program, we have a journalism school writing test, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We also ask for 3 letters of reference. So for all applications, 3 letters of reference. I don't know if there are any of you from the doctoral program who might have filtered back in. That program is also looking for an essay about your academic intent. So what you're really looking to study here at Columbia in the doctoral program. Why do we ask for all these things? Oh, one other thing. We do not ask for the GRE, the Master of Science, neither the Master of Science nor the Master of Arts. The faculty are allergic to it. They don't want to see them. We usually get a lot of cheers when we say that. The GRE never showed anybody who was going to be a good journalist. So no GREs for the Master of Science or the Master of Arts unless you are applying to a dual degree program that requires it for their application. So if you're applying to the dual degree with religion, the dual degree with the School of International and Public Affairs, they require it. You've got to take it for them. Submit it only to them. Don't send it here. Spend your money sending it to other places. The law school is looking for the LSAT. The business school in general is looking for the GMAT. So you have to look at both applications to be sure that you're completing both the requirements for each school if you're applying to a dual degree program. The PhD program does require the GRE. They want it. So if you're applying to the PhD program, go ahead and send your GRE scores. As far as what we're looking for in an applicant, we are looking, first of all, for people who are good writers. Why good writers? The journalism school, the master's programs focus first and foremost on reporting and writing, and reporting and writing, and reporting and writing, and reporting and writing. I can't emphasize that enough. We are interested in your writing. We're interested in seeing about your ability to put together a sentence, to put together a paragraph, to put together a page, to put together several pages. The job of a journalist is to do the reporting, get the facts, dig deeper, and then be able to analyze and synthesize what they've come up with and present it in a fashion that is accessible to whoever is looking at this content, whether it is writing, whether it is video, whether it's audio. So all of the programs are looking for that. Obviously, we're looking for an interest in journalism. That is key. This is one of 3 freestanding graduate journalism schools in the United States. Many others are journalism programs under an umbrella of a communications department or a media department, something like that. Columbia Journalism does only journalism at the master's level. And so we're looking for that interest because we want the students who come here to want to learn what we're offering. it's awful to be here if you are not interested in journalism, because the only thing anybody is interested in here is journalism. And I think that our students would tell you that. So we're looking for a really firm interest in journalism. We are also looking for people who are curious. Journalism is one of the great professions for people who are not ready to settle down on one subject. People who are interested in everything, who are sometimes asked or told, why can't you focus on one thing? That sort of thing. We want people to be interested in many, many, many different areas. Why? You will get a job as a reporter, the job that Gina mentioned that most people come out with, and you're going to be asked to cover all sorts of different stories. It doesn't matter whether you're particularly interested in that story. When the editor says go and bring this back by 3 o'clock, you have to do that. So we're looking for people who have that kind of curiosity, who are thoughtful about what they're reporting, and who are willing to dig deeper, who are not satisfied with what's on the surface, but who are looking for not just the surface story, but the story below the surface, the story below that one. So we're looking for that kind of curiosity. We're looking for determination. It's not easy to be a reporter. It is not easy to be a journalist. People don't want to talk to you. You're digging around for stories where people are trying to cover things up. They might not be interested in having you looking around at what they're doing. You have to be determined. You have to be persistent. You have to keep digging. So we're looking for that quality in our students. And we're looking for people who love storytelling. So who are interested in humans, who are interested in their lives, in the stories, telling their stories, telling the stories of all of the communities here in the United States and also abroad. We have a lot of students who come here who are interested in international journalism. We have a lot of students coming from abroad who are interested in reporting American stories, but from an international perspective. And so we're looking for people who are going to cover those kinds of things. For the doctoral students, we are looking for people who are interested in academic careers. So who are interested in academic research, teaching, in communications, and for subjects that sort of cross communications. The doctoral program, as Professor Tucker had said, is an interdisciplinary program. Students can take coursework in many divisions at Columbia. So we're looking for people who are looking for that kind of interdisciplinarity and who are comfortable with that. There are some people where it's more comfortable that you've got a set group of courses that you have to take and you go ahead and take them. The doctoral program, you're required to take a small group of set courses, but then you make selections about the coursework that you'll take with the help of your faculty advisor, depending on what your academic interests are. So we're looking for people who want that kind of interdisciplinary academic experience. I'm going to stop there for a couple minutes and just take some questions about that you all might have about the application process. If you could speak into the microphone back there, thank you.
One of the prospective students mentioned earlier that 75%, or she asked the question and it was answered, 75% of the accepted students are female and only 25% are male. Is that just because men are not applying to the program as much? Just what's the reason for that, from my knowledge?
Sure, there are fewer men who are applying to graduate programs in journalism. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, back in the back.
All kind of be allowed to
Maybe stand up for me.
So, like you mentioned, that books are part of the application, and that people who don't have journalism experience maybe wonder what sort of books they should be sending. I was just curious about what contents of those books should be, and also if you do have journalism experience, if it's okay if that's more of an editorial opinion section sort of book, or if it should be more like a news feature.
Sure. Okay. The question is, what are we looking for in clips? What are we looking for? I'm going to start first with the idea of somebody who has prior journalism experience. We are looking for, from that person, we are looking for clips that show the reporting that you've done and your writing ability. That's basically what we're looking for. If you are in television or radio, so broadcast, we're looking for the same kinds of things. We're looking for the reporting that you've done behind the story. And we're looking to be able to, you know, hear that or see it in what you're doing. For people who are broadcast people as opposed to writing, it's absolutely fine to submit video and audio clips. At least one of your clips should be a writing clip, because we do want to see what your writing looks like. For people who have little or no journalism experience, and so that might include somebody who's done work for their college newspaper, it's absolutely fine to submit college newspaper clips. For people who have no journalism experience, we get a fair number of people, probably between a quarter and a third of each incoming class, no journalism experience at all, and who are coming from other professions. So they may have, you know, be working as doctors, as lawyers. We've had dancers come, we've had farmers, we have people coming from the armed services, we have people coming from state police departments, we've had people come from the New York City Complaint Review Board, we have had people come from government work, from NGO work, from not-for-profit, we've had people come from finance. So the example I'm going to use is somebody who came 2 years ago who had been in finance. He was 35. He'd been in finance his entire career. And he came to the November info session too. And he said, what should I do? As it turned out, in the work that he did, he did a lot of analysis of companies. And so he was able to use some of those analyses that he had done, because to do them, he had to do research. So he had to do reporting. He had to talk to people in those companies. So he was able to use that kind of thing. We also had a student who came several years ago he was a political blogger. He was not a journalist, but in his own country, he wrote a blog called Saudi Jeans. He was from Saudi Arabia. And he really didn't have journalism experience. He used his blog as one of his writing samples. Another thing that I suggest that people can do, if you've got no journalism or writing experience, you've still got a little bit of time. Regardless of where you are, and I guess I would say particularly here in either New York or the United States, there are always local news organizations. So not, the ABC, the NBC, the CNN, but, the local West Sider newspaper, the local Queens newspaper, the Brooklyn Eagle, the Staten Island Advance. There are also smaller community newspapers. They're looking for people to contribute. Pitch some story ideas. See if you can get one of the editors to accept a story idea. Go write the story. See what happens. The other thing it'll do, it'll give you great experience. And if the editor likes the work that you're doing and asks you for additional work, you might be able to use that person as one of your 3 recommenders as well. So those are all possibilities. Yes.
Along those same lines of the students who are not, working journalists but are applying, I was at a session last week and I asked a question about possibly writing a news story and then using other sources for the quotes to legitimize it, but also writing in the style that makes it a journalistic story. Have students done that before, or do you not recommend that?
Sure, that's absolutely fine if you'd like to try your hand at it. I would recommend taking a look at, just Google journalism and writing and just getting some ideas about the way to put a journalistic story together, if you really don't know how to do that, so that you get an idea of what a lead is, what you want to be sure to include in the story, and how you might approach the story, how you might approach the reporting. Sure. You had a question here. When you're submitting your story, do you specify whether it was published? If it was published, absolutely. The date, the publication, right? Yeah, and even if it's in another language, absolutely. If it's in a publication from another country, absolutely. Yeah. Don't forget the English translation. Yes.
For experienced journalists, and specifically with the MA program, what kind of stories are the admissions committee particularly interested in? So something that was breaking news and exclusive, long-form journalism, investigative stuff, what's the best thing that you can show?
What is the best thing that you can show? Whatever you consider to be your very best examples of the journalism work that you've done. So for the clips, they can be, if you're an experienced journalist, they can be investigative, they can be long form, they can be a feature story, it can be, it could be, a profile, something like that. But again, we're looking for things that will show the reporting that you've done. And so that's why I'm avoiding saying opinion piece. I would stay away from opinion pieces because those are your personal opinion. And we know that journalists are working with facts and trying to maintain some neutrality. Back in the back.
So feeding off of what you were talking about opinion pieces versus reporting, where does kind of critical and analytical pieces fall into that? Sort of in that realm of it's not necessarily hard reporting, but it's not quite opinionated.
I think critical or analytical reporting pieces are fine. But again, we want to see the best examples of the reporting that you've done and the writing that you've done. Yes.
For transcripts, if you studied abroad, do you require one from whatever university?
So first question, for transcripts, if you have studied outside of the United States at a university outside of the United States, do we need those transcripts? Yes. And I'm going to reverse that for any international students who are here or who are listening. If you have studied in another country, so if you have studied in the United States for a semester as an exchange student, yes, we need that transcript. For those of you who have done programs through the Erasmus program in Europe, do we need the transcript? If you are a student at the University of Amsterdam and you did an Erasmus semester or year at the University of Madrid, do we need that transcript? Yes, unless your International Students Office has listed the courses in your transcript and authenticated the grades. Again, because it's the grades we're looking for. Second question.
For references, if we've been out of school for a number of years, would you recommend that we reach out to old professors just to get a sense of our academic, or do you prefer, my current employer?
Okay, great question. For references, What are we looking for? First of all, people who know you well, people who are really able to comment about your abilities, your promise as a journalist. So people maybe who know your writing. If you have been working as a reporter, editors are great. If you have been out of school, if there are professors that you have kept up with, and you haven't been out of school, I would say more than 5 years, one of them could be appropriate. If you are a senior in college, if you're in your last year at university, I would say 2 faculty references would be fine. Other professional references are fine, because we do have people coming from non-journalism careers. So somebody who is your supervisor. Who, sometimes people are working for a congresswoman's office, a senator's office here in the United States. If you are not reporting directly to that person, make sure that you use the person who is your direct supervisor. Always use your direct supervisor, not somebody who you think we're going to be impressed by their name. If they have not been your supervisor, choose a different reference. If you have any questions about that, if you have any individual questions about that, absolutely feel free to contact us in the admissions office, and we'll be able to help you with that. Yes. For the writing test, is there anything that you might need to know to prepare for it? The writing test is required just of the Master of Science applicants. It is a 90-minute test that's divided into 30 sections, or 30, listen to me, into 3. You would never take it, right? I wouldn't. It's a 90-minute test that's divided into 3 30-minute sections. Best way to prepare for it, keep your eye on what's going on in journalism. Keep an eye on good journalism, both in the United States as well as outside of the United States. There are no multiple choice questions. This is a writing test. There will be questions where we'll ask for short answers, like 3 sentences. Some others, a little bit longer form, 5, 8 sentences, and then some longer single-page kinds of things. What we're trying to get at in the application for both the MS and the MA is what your writing is like in different sorts of situations. So we ask for the essays. We assume that you will show those to somebody before you post them to your application. If your clips, we assume the same thing, that somebody has edited those. The writing test gives us really an idea of what happens when you sit down and think and write right at the same time. So there are no gotcha questions. You're going to be able to choose the questions that you want to answer. So, you'll pick what you feel most comfortable with. But as I said, pay attention to current events. Just pay attention to current events. Yes.
To follow up on somebody has edited it. So, for example, like I work in broadcast right now. If I worked on an act for one of our Verite documentaries, I was thinking that part of that might be a good clip, but that's clearly been, there's an executive producer, there's an editor, so would crediting them be appropriate or not, doing something else to submit?
That's a great question. The question for people who are working in broadcast and who have had other colleagues working on the piece together with them, how do you deal with that? What we are looking for is work that is solely yours. So any audio or video clips should be completely your own work. I know I've got some other questions. Let me take you, and then we'll just come around the room.
Just as
Great. The question is if you have taken some coursework within a certificate program, so not within a degree program, or if you've taken some individual courses here and there, do you need transcripts for those? We do not. Okay. Where did my question in the back go? Yes.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, do you need community college transcripts as well?
Community college transcripts are as college as anywhere else. Yes. Yes.
One other question on the clips. Do you only want recent clips or can they be years old?
Do we want just recent clips or can they be a few years old? Pick your very best. I'm going to go here and then I'll come back.
Do you have any preference between resumes or CVs? That's all on the program.
Are we looking for resumes or CVs? What are we looking for? Generally, we're looking for whatever resume it is that you use to apply for jobs. People who have been in academics will be more likely to have a CV with a publication list and that sort of thing. Yeah. Yes. At what point do you take the writing test? Once you have submitted the application, we will get in touch with you about organizing that. Yeah. You had a question in the back.
I was continuing from the writing test. If you're an international student applying, is it like an online test or do you, for example, like I live in London, is there like a place that I would go to there to take the test or is it online?
The question is, where do you take the writing test? You will be able to take the writing test pretty much where you are. So you will not have to come to New York. In general, you'll be able to take it where you are. Yeah.
In terms of submitting clips that are audio or video, should we consider it the same as when we submit writing clips that like recording is kind of paramount, or can things like your ability to like edit or produce the clip considered like worthwhile?
The question is, if you are submitting particularly video clips, what is it that we're looking for? The writing, the editing, the producing. We're looking for all of it, but we're particularly interested in the reporting and the writing behind it. Taryn, do we have any other questions from the live stream? Any other admissions application questions? Yes.
If you're working full-time as a journalist and you're going to submit clips that are a couple of years old, what would you say about having, addressing maybe that you're not doing the work right now on that job that you feel like you're capable of? To what extent is that seeing a gap between present day and the last clip, like impact your consideration? It's kind of odd. I mean, I feel like in my case, I'm working full-time journalism now, but I'm not really. I'm kind of the reason I'm here is I'm trying to get, all my skills to come back and go back into the world with
Sure.
better skills.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you are a full-time journalist and are working now, clips from a few years ago, things more recent, what are we looking for? We're looking for your very best work. And I know that it sounds to me as though you have some special questions about your situation. Taryn and I will be here afterwards, and I think Gina had said she would also be here. We are here to answer your individual questions. We're also available to make appointments with you if you want to come in to visit. And we can also make arrangements for you to sit in on classes as well. So you can keep those things in mind too. You don't, just because you walk out of the room doesn't mean you lose us. Any last questions? Okay, I'm going to turn things over to Taryn, who's going to talk about money.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Great, you're with me? We're on to the fun part, and I'm being a little bit sarcastic here. So I'll start off by saying, just so that I can grab your attention, how many of you are familiar with psychology, have taken a psychology course somewhere? Okay, How many of you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yes? Okay. So think about Maslow's, and she's smiling, she's like, psychology in this? Yes. So think about the financing aspect of it as Maslow's hierarchy of need. For those of you that might need a refresher, you remember that Maslow hierarchy of needs says that you begin with your physiological needs, with your financial needs, so that you can reach self-actualization. Think of this as self-actualization as graduating from the program. So as you're going through this process, what you want to do is think about how you're going to be financing your degrees. You want to know from the moment that you walk in through those doors how you will be paying for not only your tuition and fees, but your living expenses as well. From what you have heard throughout the program, you know that this is very fast-paced, there's going to be a lot of demands on your time, and you want to make the most out of it. And in order to make the most out of it, you want to have, remember, your physiological needs from Maslow hierarchy of needs already settled and planned out and money in your pocket. So with that said, hopefully now I have your attention, let's talk a little bit about cost. How much does it cost? For the MS program, it's approximately $65,000 for tuition and fees. That's how much the program will cost. For the MA, it's approximately $60,000 for tuition and fees. If you are interested in the part-time program, you will be paying per credit, and that's about $1,900 per credit at this moment. We also estimate that you're going to need about $30,000 for living expenses, and yes, you will be needing that. For those of you who are not from New York City, who are from other states, or who are from watching us from other countries, that might sound as though that's a high number for living expenses, but New York City is one of the 5 most expensive cities in the world. Yes, you can be paying and will be paying approximately $5 to $6 just for a cup of coffee. I know I've paid for it. So as you go through the program, just think about your expenses, mitigate them, but please plan accordingly for it. So now that I've given you those figures, what are the financing options? How are people paying for their degree when they come here? There's 3 main ways: scholarships, student loans, which are a reality, and personal resources. Scholarships, there's 2 categories under that. There is the J-School funding that we offer, and you will be filling out an application, which will be coming out in December. Make sure that you fill that out. Without that application, we will not be able to consider you for scholarship aid. That application is pretty straightforward. It's asking about your resources, asking about your expenses and everything else. If you are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, we will be requiring the free application for federal student aid. For international students, we will be requiring financial documents. So how do we determine who's going to be receiving scholarship aid? There's 3 main eligibility requirements: financial need, as demonstrated by those applications; academic merit, as determined by the admissions committee; and then what we call scholarship restrictions. Every single dollar that comes in through the J-School, it's based on donations that are made to the school. And each of those scholarships have specific eligibility requirements that the donor is looking for. So you have to meet all of those 3. The range of awards can be anywhere from about $10,000 to about $72,000, $75,000 to the full cost of living. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that you need to file for scholarship aid. Remember, or I don't know if this was discussed, admissions is need blind, so we will not be reviewing your financial aid applications until you know that you have been admitted and we're ready to offer you a spot. So your financial need is not a consideration when determining if you're going to be admitted into the program or not. The deadline for that will be February 1st. Do not worry, we will be sending you an email and letting you know when that application is available and reminding you of the deadline. The second category under scholarships, it's outside scholarship funding. And these are fundings and opportunities that are offered by private organizations. And they have their own application requirements, deadlines. If you go to our website, we start you off with a list. It's not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, but you can definitely start looking through that, apply for those that you think you might qualify for, and then do your own research. You will find people that will tell you that's a waste of time. I'm telling you, it's not. I've seen checks as small as $200 and as big as $40,000 to the full cost. So do your due diligence and really research outside scholarships. There are some scams out there, so just be aware if they're asking you for personal identification, social security numbers, anything like that. If they're asking for an application fee, or if they're asking for any bank account information or anything like that, 9 times out of 10, those are not legitimate organizations, so just move it along. Another tip for researching outside scholarships, yes, you are a journalist, but that's not everything of who you are. So what I will suggest is writing a list. Sort of think of yourself as a pie that's made up of many different parts, and say, for example, I'm a woman, interested in human rights, and then you start searching for scholarships that way. So those are scholarships. Student loans, people are borrowing, it is a reality. If you are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident and you've attended undergrad, there's a slight difference, actually a big difference. The federal government does not offer any grants or scholarships for graduate students. What they do offer are student loans. If you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident and you're not in default of a prior student loan, guaranteed $20,500 that you will be able to use towards your studies. Obviously, I've quoted the numbers, that might not be enough. So you are able to borrow for the Graduate Plus loan. Same terms and condition is still coming in from the Department of Education, but they will be looking at your credit in order to determine your eligibility. But they're looking for really negative things. If you want further information about what the repayment will look like, what are the interest rate, just the terms and conditions, if you go to this website, student loans with an S at the end, .gov, it's a really great website. If you go under the repayment calculators, it's a really great tool for you to go into. What I usually recommend students to do is think of the worst case scenario, think how much you're going to have to borrow throughout the program, and then it'll give you at the end the different repayment plans, how much you will be paying per month and throughout the life of the loan. So that leads us to the third category, which is personal funding. And these are funds that you may have in savings or in your checking accounts, or you might have a family member who is helping you or a friend, whatever the case may be. Tuition will be due, if you're in the part-time program, 3 times a year. The summer semester, fall, and spring. If you're in the full-time program, twice, fall and summer. And you will have 2 or 3 payment due dates that the university will say, whatever it is that you owe, you have to pay by this deadline. If you do not, we'll accrue late fees, you will not be able to register for the following semester and everything else. However, for the fall and the spring semester, there is a payment plan that you can enroll in. They don't look at your credit history. The fee is very minimal. It's like $55. There's no interest rate. And what you're able to do is spread out that amount, whatever is coming out of your pocket, that's not in scholarship, that it's not in student loans, and spread it out into 10 months. So that makes it a little bit more feasible for people to enroll in it. So I feel like I've bombarded you with a lot of information, and I see the expressions. So I will open it up now for any questions that anyone may have. Yes? The question is, what percentage of students who actually enroll incur debt? That's anywhere from about 70 to about 80% that we know of. And the reason why I say that we know of, it's because international students are usually borrowing student loans, but they're borrowing it from their home countries. And we don't have all of the data in that regards. And the question is, what is the average amount of debt? It can be, I can give you a range because it all depends. It can be anywhere from the $20,500 to the full cost of attendance. Remember the cost of attendance, tuition and fees, plus your living expenses. So it can be up to the $90,000. Yes?
Is there really such a thing as student loan forgiveness, or it doesn't exist?
Is there such a thing as student loan forgiveness, or it doesn't exist? Yes. it does exist. If you go to studentloans.gov, it'll give you some information and detailed information about that. The caveat to that is that most of them, you have to be working at a not-for-profit organization, and it will be for a certain number of years that you will have to be enrolled. But yes, yes. Mhm.
For scholarships and financial aid, is there a difference when you guys consider part-time students versus full-time?
Is there, for scholarship awarding, is there a difference between the part-time awards that we allocate and the full-time? Yes, there is. Remember, for the part-time, you're spreading out your courses and the enrollment into 2 years, and in the full-time, you're doing it in a year or less. So the quote that I gave you, about $10,000 to about the $72,000 or so, that's for full-time. For the part-time, it can be anywhere per academic year. It can be anywhere from about $2,000 to about $20,000 or so. The great thing about it is that if you file for your scholarship aid application and all of the documents and the free application for federal student aid, and you submit it by the deadline, if we offer you an admissions spot, or if it's a favorable one, you will be receiving your financial aid letter at the same time. So there is not this guessing period for you. Mhm. Great question. Of those people that apply, oh yes, let me repeat the question, I keep forgetting. What is the percentage of students that receive scholarship aid? Of those that apply for scholarship, because there are some that do not submit a scholarship aid application, of those that do apply, it's anywhere from about 60 to about 70%, depending on the year. And he asked if that includes inside and outside. No, that's J-School funding. That is correct. For the last 2 years, we have received, or that we know of, the aggregate amount, about $400,000 has come in from outside scholarship funding, students bringing in funds.
What percentage of minorities are included in those statistics?
What percentage of minorities are included in which statistics?
It's like that 60-70%. How many of those are Latino?
On the back of your packet,
Is it on there?
yes, you will find the breakdown
Okay.
of it. Mhm, mhm. Any other financing questions? Yes.
At any point, have you calculated what the average net price or what the average student ends up paying?
When you say, have we calculated the net price of what an actual student ends up paying? Do you mean like whatever the cost may be minus the scholarship grants and everything else, correct? We have not. We have not. But by the ranges of student loans that I've given to you and everything, that should give you an idea. But that's an excellent question. Any other financing questions? Any other questions at all? Okay, so if you're anything like me, after you've walked away, you're going to think of like 30 other questions. Feel free to reach out. Like I said, asking saves a lot of guessing work. So with that, I'll turn it over to, no, I can close, okay. So thank you for joining us on this wonderful, lovely day. And for those of you who are watching us via live stream on Facebook, thank you for spending your Saturday morning or night, wherever you may be. And hopefully we'll see you here as a student. Thank you.